Let's talk Steinhoff and the disaster that befell the company, but not only the company and its employees and the future stability of the unit created over the last 50 years, but also the stability of your financial, of your finances. As I mean, certainly in my own little retirement annuity, it made up 4% of the value, but that was then, and we try not to think too hard about it. I mean, here's the reality: everybody with any kind of pension product in South Africa has been affected by the collapse of Steinhoff. Yeah. We have a chief executive, a former chief executive, who's hiding away from any kind of scrutiny. We've got financial sector authorities around the world trying to find mechanisms to throw him in jail. Yet the money is gone. Is it gone for good, is the question.
You know, I think anyone who'd want to make an investment case for Steinhoff right now has a lot of faith, because like you mentioned earlier, it's a company that is it's selling its assets, and the only reason we're still talking about it right now is because its creditors have been kind, if I can put it that way.
There are 150 billion, was it rands or dollars of creditors? Rands, thank goodness about that. I mean, the small mercies.
And I mean, that number says why they've had to be kind, because it's a brave person who writes off that sort of debt.
What's the story? If you have a small debt, you lose sleep at night. If you have a big debt, your bank manager loses sleep at night. And Steinhoff's bankers are losing sleep. We see massive write-offs in American banks as a result of their exposures to Steinhoff.
And you see, I mean, you touched on the former CEO, Marcus Jooste. You know, news coming out today on Bloomberg that he stands to now make almost 500 million because he's got his own separate company, Mayfair, and they were making loans but backing it on Steinhoff shares. Now the banks that they owed that debt to, Vestact, I think is one of them, Standard Bank and Sanlam, if I'm not mistaken, have asked him to start selling their assets. And at the end of that, he could still walk away with almost 500 million. And you ask, how did this happen? Clearly what has happened here is, it's fraud.
It's a perversion of epic proportions, which does nothing for the credibility and the sanctity in a fraught environment like South Africa, Paul Theron, for the investment markets. Investment markets are critical to make countries work. But when you get that sort of activity happening and that sort of enrichment happening, despite the disaster on another side of your life, the credibility of financial markets go to a wastepaper basket.
I haven't seen that Bloomberg article, but I'd be surprised if Jooste manages to ring fence any of these assets, because Mayfair speculators had Steinhoff shares and loans secured by blah, blah, blah. But at some point, I think they're going to pin him down. Look, I think at the moment, Steinhoff is a raging garbage fire, a skip on the back of a train which went off a cliff. It's not coming back. It's on life support. I think there's pretty much close to zero value in the equity. Avoid, sell if you still have them. You might as well extract a few rands, because the scale of the debt in these situations, I mean, on top of everything else, those properties they had in Europe were found to be worth much less than they continuously told the market they were. So I'm afraid when these kind of sandcastles, start crumbling, there's very seldom any value to be extracted.
Is there any value anywhere in South Africa right now, Mduduzi?
I really can't make a guess for Steinhoff, because even
let's ignore Steinhoff. Paul just killed Steinhoff, so let's pretend it doesn't exist. Is there any value in the world? We've seen that trading update from Standard Bank, which wasn't scary, it was just real, but we've seen some pretty interesting numbers come out of Clicks recently, some fairly interesting numbers in April come out of Pick and Pay, and the market loved that, and a couple of other sets of results which suggested that perhaps the underlying economic activity that's very slow to get started is finally going to bear some fruit.
I think, if you're looking at the SA economy, a lot is dependent on our current president, and I sort of feel sorry for him. We know that he's created the special envoy that has been sent out globally to look for foreign direct investment in our country.
Just $100 billion over 5 years.
Only, but a lot is dependent on projects like that. People ask why the special envoy, because the situation we're in requires special attention, and he's balancing getting that foreign direct investment at the same time knowing that next year is an election year. We know today that there are strikes, labor market isn't happy. I would not want to be the president at the moment, but our markets, in terms of going forward, the performance is 100% based on what he can achieve.
And so much depends also on how we treat our own markets and how we treat our own investments, and whether or not South Africans are willing to put money where the president's mouth is on this one, Paul Theron. Because if we're not prepared to invest in our own companies, in our own infrastructure, in our own assets in South Africa, why should foreigners give us $100 billion of investment in the next 5 years? It can't just be on Cyril Ramaphosa's shoulders. This is going to be far broader.
Like those targets for inward investment are just sort of
they're nice big numbers.
They flim-flam, and anybody who's planning to do anything can put their hand up and be part of the project, and that's good. I'm very encouraged by the appointment of Trudy Makaya as President Ramaphosa's economic advisor, because she
good appointment.
Has a lot of great ideas, and also from her writings I can tell she doesn't buy this argument about intervention in state markets and propping up defunct state-owned enterprise, so that's all good. Look, there are opportunities in our local markets. I think Naspers remains a very interesting one because of the 10-cent value gap. I think that gets unwound over the next 3 years. I think companies like Discovery are very exciting and going global and doing great things. I think Aspen is significantly undervalued. We like Bidcorp. So, it's not as though there aren't things to...
These are South African companies, but their focus is external, not internal.
Yeah, which we know isn't always a good thing. Plenty of South African companies have crashed and burned with their offshore enterprises. But I think when they're big enough and they're doing really interesting and important things globally, then the investment case is easier to make.
But what about companies that are exposed to SA Inc.?
Well, you mentioned Clicks. I like it. Dischem continues to do well. I think if you own those stocks already, well, hold them, because the truth is got to be that in 2018, 2019, we're going to see more credit extension and better consumer confidence. Surely. It can't be. At some point, people must get cheerful again. Young people, they just get cheerful. That's what they do.
I think the main thing what you're seeing from the current regime is that they've put a lot of emphasis in changing the structure of the economy. They're looking at it as a private company and saying, how do we fix this and how do we get it right? But those sort of moves take years. There is no 6-month or 12-month quick fix. And unfortunately for a lot of people, that's what they're looking for. And that's why I say I feel sorry for the current president, because he's come in, he was there before as the deputy, but he's come in, he's saying, I've seen the problems.
You don't have to feel sorry for him, he chose this. He chose this, and thank goodness he did, because there is the sense, there is a growing sense of optimism that stuff is possible, Paul Theron, and at least that's better than we were 6 months ago.
Indeed, and I think in time what we'll see is the usual early leading indicators, followed by the increased corporate spending, investment in new facilities and so on and so forth in the desired areas, and then the consumer follow through. Because consumers are quite clever. They make decisions based on what they think their prospects are and what their access to credit are, and so it takes a while. So I'm not negative, and I think as usual one's got to make that call about investing, put it to work, and try and get the balance right between local and global investment opportunities.
But that appointment of the investment envoys and also Trudy Makaya as advisor to President Cyril Ramaphosa, absolutely pivotal in sending very strong signals that South Africa is deadly serious about sorting out its problems. Let's pick up on that in just a moment.